morning and Happy New Year to all our listeners, Wesley. It's a new year, 2021. Wow.
Yes, good morning, and good morning to our listeners. It is going to be a better new year and a better year for us all.
I hope so. I really do hope so.
Yes.
I think, but saying that, I think we're probably very fortunate in being in New Zealand at this moment of time.
Yes, I don't think we know how lucky we are to be in New Zealand and to have a country that is pretty much controlling this virus, but you can never be sure.
No, I think it's, as I was saying to you earlier on, my sister in Scotland, her friend's neighbour, all three are in hospital with the virus. Parents and an 18-year-old daughter, and that's just because they had travelled out of their area over Christmas.
Yes.
I think it's a different story over there that we just got no idea about. Yeah. But anyway, let's not get drawn into that. We are fortunate we're in New Zealand and lots of things are still going on here and lots of changes are still happening.
Mm-hmm.
And so what's going to happen for 2021, Wesley?
Well, Citizens Advice is still operating. We have got a good number of volunteers because we in the Wairarapa are all volunteers. We have our chairperson Heather Puller, who took over from me last year, and it was quite a relief not to have to take that responsibility on anymore, but we still want to be able to carry on giving people information over Arrow FM as long as we can. I'm hoping to get a few new people on board with us to give us a bit of relief and to give our listeners a bit of variety as well.
New faces.
Yeah, we're going to work hard on trying to get some new guests in of interest. I looked back through our years being on this program. I've got records back to 2012, which isn't too bad, is it? No, just rough records.
Wow.
But,
yeah.
And looking back through, there seems to be similar subjects and guests, and that just shows that basically those are the things in the community that people need help with. But sometimes it's getting harder to access some of the government agency people because they have to jump through so many hoops to come on and be a guest. So that's probably why we do a bit of the talk about them and give you information on how to get to those agencies. And sometimes we can really give you good guidance on questions to ask and information to have on hand.
Yeah, it is quite interesting. I think even since we've started CABTalk, but probably from when we were started as volunteers, how inquiries have actually, I think, got more intense.
Yes.
In the need of information. I think years ago we had quite a few on quite everyday things, and maybe, I think I can remember one, when was Easter in 5 years' time and things like that. But now when people come in, it's usually on unemployment or grievance or health, and it's a lot of it is trying to work through the stepping stones of getting answers.
Yes. And then you get the people who are finding life very stressful at the moment, and then we've got the elder population that's getting increasingly more needy. Needy is the right word, I think.
Needy, or just the needs are increasing.
Yeah. And understanding sometimes people. I find that at times it's very difficult to really understand what what the sequence is of going through a procedure, and especially digitally. But there is a lot of assistance out there for older people to with the digital service. But the way that things are getting hacked, it does make you wonder, does it not, whether the old dollars and cents are not too bad to have some in your purse?
No, I know, but then again, they're trying to, are they going to phase it out? It's going to be a thing in the future to look into.
Yes.
No, it has been quite interesting. I suppose that probably our hair colour probably says that we've had a bit of life now, Wesley, and we can look back and reflect on things. But I always think we can look back and reflect on things, but from an eyes of a child, it's so much different to when you're a grown up.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I can remember as a child feeling quite put out because I never used to get any mail. And I thought, well, how come my mum and dad always get mail and I don't? But now I realise that mail is usually bills, so I don't really want it. So,
I must tell you a priceless thing that my grandson said to his father the other day when we were lucky to have Christmas together. And he said, "Dad, is it Granny or Papa? Who's the most with it?" And then, as I told you earlier, he's now got his arm in a plaster and has broken his arm in 2 places. Yeah. So I think he was trying to do an Houdini act off a swing or a slide or something and came off worse off. But
yes.
Luckily, young bones and young bodies usually recover pretty well.
Pretty good, yes. Even though at the time it's usually quite intense.
Very.
Right, Wesley, let's have some music and then we can come back and perhaps start talking about
the serious stuff.
Yes.
Right.
I feel it in my finger, I feel it in my toe. Love is all around me, and so the feeling grows. It's written on the wind, it's everywhere I go. Oh yes it is. So if you really love me, come on and let it show. Beside me in everything I do. Oh yes I do. You know I love you, I always will. My mind's made up by the way that I feel.
that was wet, and I think love is all around. So let's make that true for 2021. Yeah.
Good.
Right.
Righto, Moira. I've taken down some notes from the MB website. Changes to the Residential Tenancy Act Phase 1 law changes took effect on the 12th of August 2020. And basically they transitional and emergency housing accommodation provided for these purposes, which is funded by the government or part of the Operation Special Needs Grant programs, is exempt from the Family Residential Act, Tenancy Act. So I'll repeat that. Transitional and emergency housing accommodation provided for these purposes is, which is funded by the government, is exempt from the Residential Tenancy Act.
Okay.
So basically, from my reading of that, means that if you're in that situation where you're in transitional housing or emergency housing, it's exempt from the Act, which means that rent increases cannot occur, and it's limited, and that's limited to once a year. So you have to really inquire with your, well, not so much your landlord, but with someone like Citizens Advice to just get a rundown on exactly what your situation is. And also, if you're on one of those emergency benefits, the people that give them to you, which is the government, so it's work and income, you would ask, they would help you.
Work and income would govern through it quite together, you know, and I think a lot of emergency houses is directed from work and income out to the community.
Yes.
And I think one of the is, I think, like work and income will, and I think emerges as one of the emergency housing organisation, but they have to be notified from work and income for the individual.
Yes.
At the moment, they're still using motels and things like that for emergency housing, but there is a period of time, and also that, you know, there is related to the can you say the behaviour in the hotels as well. A lot of people unfortunately have lost the emergency housing because of behaviour and problems going on. So even though, you know, it's only a temporary measure.
Well, it is only a temporary measure, and it's the shortage, and also the changes also that came in August, where the rent increases were limited to once every 12 months. So that is what happened in August. Now you move on to from February the 11th.
And there's some huge changes coming on in February. There's a number of different things happening, isn't there?
Yes. Security of rental tenants is one of the tenancies, is one of the things that has gone in favour. Well, some people say it's gone in favour of the tenant, but I doubt that very much. I think that it's just tried to even out the agreement, and landlords will not be able to end a tenancy agreement without cause.
No, I think it's tidying up a lot of the loose ends that was about tenancy. I'm trying to find out the information what I had earlier on, but of course it's gone. And I think there is that, you know, you've got your contract, and it is seen as a contract, and under that contract it will line out what's going to happen, i.e. like the 3 monthly landlord or manager's check, depends who's looking after that contract.
Yeah.
And that was an interesting thing I found out, that i.e. if you've had a contract through your landlord and he changes over to like a agency manager
Yes.
for the property, you actually have to have a new contract with that agency manager, and it also affects the bond, because I think the bond has to be registered under the manager and not the landlord. So that is something you really need to work out. Yeah.
Yes, I didn't get into that subject.
Yeah.
It didn't actually come into the bonds, because the bonds are all meant to be.
The bond is
Put into the MB. It's held by MB.
It is held by MB, but I think it has to be lodged under like the landlord. But if a landlord is no longer managing his property,
It goes through the agency.
yeah, so it has to be lodged under the agency, because if you leave that property, your bond will be returned through the agency and not from the landlord. So I can understand that.
Well, whatever happens, the bond is not held in the hands of a landlord or an agency.
No.
It's passed on.
Yeah. And no, I'm not finding my things I was reading earlier on. And and I think, and also I suppose the other thing is, if you go from landlord to agency, your payment is also changed, because it goes through the agency and not the landlord.
Yes.
So that, I think that's where the bond and all that comes into it.
Well,
as
I
well.
suppose so. And also the landlord comes to an agreement with an agency. The landlord may be absentee or in another part of the country, and he just asks, or she asks, that has an agreement with the agency to carry out that. And the same thing applies with security, privacy, and all those things. You have to be notified before they come onto your property.
Yeah, they even if it's a 3-monthly check, they still got to give you X amount of hours warning before they.
I think so. I think it's about 20. It's quite a long time.
Yeah,
yeah.
And I think a lot of them they structure the 3-monthly checks from the last one, so that you've got a 3-month period of check. And I think also that 3-monthly check, it sounds a check, but it's also a time for the tenant to be able to maybe draw attention to something that needs repairing and things like that. So I think, use it as a way of looking after your property, after your home, because it is the tenant's home.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Landlords will not be able to end a periodic tenancy without cause, and they have to provide 90 days notice. New termination grounds will be provided to landlords under a periodic tenancy, and required notice periods have changed. So these changes are small, but they mean a lot to the person in the resident.
I think they mean a lot to the landlord as well.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a bit of flexibility, a bit more going on for people to be able to accept the changes.
Changes to fixed-term tenancies. All fixed-term agreements will convert to periodic tenancies at the end of the fixed term, unless the parties agree otherwise. So one of the things that is most important is to know what you've got. Yeah. Have that document. All landlords have to provide a written tenancy agreement. And unless the parties agree otherwise, the tenant gives 28 days notice to leave. If you want to go after your fixed term tenancy, you have to give the landlord 28 days notice, or the landlord gives notice in accordance. So if you're on a fixed term and your term's running out, you want to make sure that you contact your landlord, your agency, whatever, and let them know in good time whether that you wish to carry on, or that you give them 28 days notice that you're going to move out, and the landlord gives notice in accordance. So making minor changes to the property, now that is pretty standard, isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next.
I think, yes, we say yes, but for some it may not be.
No.
You know, as I said, it is your home, but you've got to respect the building, really.
Yeah.
You know.
Now, the other suggestion that I make, if you just do everything on your digitally, and if you have given a written copy and you're not very good at keeping papers and things like that in your house, but you should be. You only need a cardboard box with a label on it. But otherwise, take a photo of the agreement on your
cell phone,
your cell phone, and put it in your storage,
so
that you've got it in two places. It's always good to have things as a backup. Okay.
And I think that goes for the property as well. When you're going round, when you move into a property, if you feel that things is not, should be, or questionable, take a photograph, and then you can say, well, that's how it was when you moved in.
Yep.
You know, things like that.
And I think that when you do have your tenancy agreement and you go through the house before you sign on the dotted line, as you say, take some photographs as well as the list of items that are there in the house, and the condition of the carpet, the condition of the walls, make sure everything works, all those things before you actually take possession of that property. Because it's easy to get things fixed then rather than a week later.
That's true. Yeah, but as a tenant, the tenant's responsible if anything goes wrong in contacting the landlord or the agency and not leave it. I.e., if you've got a dripping tap and it keeps dripping, it's only going to get worse. Just let them know. It may be just a washer rather than a flood one day. You know what I mean? It's being sensible and being responsible.
Yes.
Yeah.
When you are renting, you've got to take into consideration that the landlord is paying the rates and insurance, and that's another subject we might touch on in a minute. And also, when it comes in this area, we're going to have water meters.
Yes.
So they'll be metered, and that'll be another agreement of how much water you use.
Yeah, because I think the water meter will go through the landlord agent, won't it, before it comes to the tenant. Yeah. So I think, you probably, the tenant will have to be aware of the water that they can have free before they have to start paying extras.
Yes. Okay. So, you've got to keep up with what's happening in your own backyard, don't you?
You need a warrant of fitness book that says to go into be.
Yes. So, where are we now?
And I think insurance is, you touched on insurance, and I think, as you said, the landlord will insure the building and everything else.
Yes, but you should have your own contents
insured. And also, I mean, if anything goes wrong, i.e., if anything happens in the house and it was because of your, it could have been an accident in the house, but it was because of your actions.
Yes.
You're liable to be responsible for repair.
Yeah.
So if you got your insurance for that could cover you for that as well. So it's one of those grey areas that I think people don't probably look at enough, insurance, and realise what responsibilities they have and what they don't have. I think
perhaps that might be a good subject for future insurance. Because it is something that is changing depending on areas.
I think in the last few years with earthquakes and things like that. There's been huge changes in insurance
and
policies. Yeah.
Yes, and actually insurance in houses that are rented. So I'm writing that down for future reference.
All right. Yes.
Because that is something that I can't advise on at the moment because I don't really know.
No.
But I think that the other thing that reminds me of a movie I've just watched, but it's making minor changes. This is the next subject.
Yeah.
Making minor changes to the property, and the landlord must not decline if the changes are minor.
I wonder what they would class as minor.
Well,
that's quite an open-ended thing.
Yes, I'm presuming it might mean, well, if you're allowed pets, putting a dog kennel out, or a chicken run, or a garden.
I think some things like chicken runs and things like that could be, minor could be that, yes, you can do it, but if you leave, you've got to put it back as it was.
Yes.
You might have to just be careful with that one as well.
I'm presuming it doesn't mean adding on something to the house.
No, or changing a doorway to a different place in the wall or things like that.
Yeah,
no.
but it might mean putting up a fly screen or changing the blinds or putting up some curtains that weren't there.
Yeah, it's actually quite an open-end one. That I think would be something that probably the tenancy would have in the agreement, that would probably have a description of some idea of what they class as minor.
Yes, the landlord must not decline if the changes are minor. The landlords must respond to the tenant's request within 21 days.
I wonder if it's like if you want to change a colour in a room, i.e. if you want to add a colour to the room or something
or paint
like
the wall.
Because that can be put back as is.
And I wondered if it might be if you wanted a ramp put in.
That could be for health reasons. Then you're going to get into that tricky thing. If it's for health and well-being.
Yes. No, there wasn't an appendage to that, and it mentioned that.
Yeah.
So that could be, but I didn't write that down because I thought that would just complicate things.
It's this is probably where we used to say, read the small print.
Yes.
Yeah.
And doctors and health professionals would be able to add that to a flat or a house, and you do see it happening.
Yeah.
And we, as Citizens Advice Bureau renters with the Masonic, we requested that our step at the front of the house, front of the building, be flattened out so that a wheelchair could get in, and they did that for us. So that would be something that would be part of the agreement.
Because I think also that the health and disability guidelines towards housing is taken into effect with building of houses as well. So it's surprising how much things has to be addressed before you can actually even start building a house.
Yes.
Yeah. The width of the doors, the width of a hallway, the
shower areas and things like that, and wet floor showers. So I think that most of these agreements can be worked through with both parties. So and so those requests do have to be replied to within 21 days.
So what they're saying is, if you do wish to do some small changes, apply to your landlord or your agency first, and just get the boxes ticked to say okay, and that's it. Yeah.
And if you're a special needs person or disability, health and disability, that request can be assisted by your health provider. So those were the things. That was a couple of the things that really stood out for me. And then the next one were law changes to take effect on the 11th of February 2021. So we would work through to that after our break.
Right, we'll give everybody a break by having some music.
Oh, when the sun beats down and burns the tar up on the roof, and your shoes get so hot, you wish your tired feet were fireproof. Under the boardwalk, down by the sea, yeah. On a blanket with my baby, that's where I'll be. Under the boardwalk, out of the sun. Under the boardwalk, we'll be having some fun. Under the boardwalk, people walking above. Under the boardwalk, we'll be falling in love. Under the boardwalk, boardwalk. From the park, you hear the happy sound of a carousel. You can almost taste the hot dogs and French fries they sell. Under the boardwalk, down by the sea, yeah. On a blanket with my baby is where I'll be. Under the boardwalk, out of the sun. Under the boardwalk, be having some fun. Under the boardwalk, people walking above. Under the boardwalk, we'll be falling in love. Under the boardwalk, boardwalk. With my baby is where I'll be. Under the boardwalk, out of the sun. Under the boardwalk, we'll be having some fun. Under the boardwalk, people walking above. Under the boardwalk, we'll be falling in love. Under the boardwalk, boardwalk.
Oops. Right, that nearly caught us out, didn't it, Westley?
Yes.
Right, on the boardwalk, and I don't think that's part of minor alterations.
Well, it might be, you never know.
Right, so what else is going to be changing in 11th?
On the changes, the prohibition on rental bidding. Now, that means that properties cannot be advertised without the rental price advertised.
Okay, so and that's it. So they can't come along and say, "I'm going to give you an extra $50 a week for that property." That's no longer.
It's illegal to do that.
Yeah.
Well, will be illegal to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know how, if you have 6 people wanting to rent a property, and you've got to decide who you're going to rent it to.
I think a lot of it's going to come down to references.
Yes.
And also be interested to see if the bonds will be increased. It'd be interested to see how things will react to the changes.
I think that bonds are pretty much standard. They have to be a certain percentage, don't they? They have to be at least 2 weeks or 3 weeks, equivalent to 3 weeks rent in advance.
And that's another thing I think people probably need to be aware of, how the bond is there for security, but maybe check out when and how it can be utilised. If a landlord says you're only going to get X amount return because of some damage, you might find that that's not covered under the bond, the damage. So I think really, if you're going in to have a tenancy agreement, you really do need to read the small print and read what the bond actually means.
Well,
Because I think there's been changes towards the bond agreements as well. Mm-hmm.
In my view, a bond is there for the protection of the landlord and the landlord's property, but it's also an incentive for you, the renter, to look after that property, so that when you leave or want to move on, you get that bond back.
Yep. Or transferred across,
General wear and tear is not abuse of a property. Every property has general wear and tear. That it's not wear and tear like tearing down walls and things like that. It's general use of property.
Yes.
And everything has a lifespan when you buy something. You know, you don't expect, now with consumer, you don't expect a fridge to last forever.
No.
So you can't expect a carpet in a house that you've been in for 10, 20 years to be the same as when you went in.
I think if expression, it's a lot of things starts looking tired. And that's, to me, is general wear and tear. You know, when the paintwork looks a bit tired, looks as though it could do with a freshen up and things like that. That is your wear and tear.
And when you think that a lot of properties or little units in rest homes and retirement villages, when it's vacated, most of them are refurbished. And one of the things they do is take up the carpet. Sometimes they look perfectly all right.
Yes.
But,
I think also, I mean, you say that, I think anywhere, when you go from one place to the other, where you're going to, as a tenant or into your own property, you're always looking for that fresher look, aren't you? You know. So you either have to get the paintbrush out, or somebody's got the paintbrush out before you move in. It's one way or the other that, you know, people are looking for things to look nice in general.
And the other part of the because we digressed a little, properties cannot be advertised without the price. You know, the rental being advertised without the price. 5 broadband tenants can request, if it's not in the house, they can request that it be put in.
If it's free.
Landlords must agree, if not, if no cost to them.
Yeah, I think if it's free, if it advertised as free, they can.
Yes.
And I think the other big one is the 90-day clause within that clause of terminating your tenancy. I think, you've got the 90 days, but it's changing to the reasons why your tenant can be terminated. I think even if it's for family, they still have to have the 90-day sort of allowance to say you've got 90 days to find somewhere else. There's a change around the tenancy, and I think it also changes towards that. I.e., if you have done damage to the property, you can get a written warning, and then if it's still continuing, you can get, after 3 written warnings, it's like 3 strikes, you're out, literally.
Yes, well,
and I think it's got to be within a period of time, and also if you fail to pay your rent in that 90 days, you've got 3 chances, and then you are more or less out. I think there is the change to that in that 90-day period.
Yeah, well, there's certainly quite a few changes, and one of them is privacy and access. A suppression order can be removed if you have a suppression court order on if you've gone into a dispute with the landlord and gone to the disputes tribunal, and you've got a suppression order on your name for other reasons, or for some reason you've got that, that can be removed. And names, identified details from it can be removed from being published. But they have to have a proper reason, and you have to go and apply for that. Well, the landlord would, or the agency. And that would only occur if there was a real breakdown.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think you've got the tenancy tribunal. You know, they've got their 0800 number that they are there for people to call. You know, if you have got any issues. I mean, we've got quite a bit of information at the CAB. We've got the agreements and copies and tenancy copies and all that. So you can actually come in and, you know, and pick one up. And if you read it and you're not sure, just come back and ask, you know, because sometimes, you know, wording can be a bit when you read something, or you're not picking up actually what it means. Yeah.
Well, when you can see the number of pages, it is very difficult to get every aspect of it. And there's going to be more changes and enforcement measures, and they're going to be strengthened. And that is later in the year. And we'll have those guidelines and those law changes will be out. And that's going to include family violence and exemptions to the agreement, and that's coming in August.
All right. I mean, I think what they're trying to do is bring clarity to the tenancy agreement. It's been a bit hearsay for quite some time, and I think they're just trying to get everything into line so there's more clarity and people understand where they stand. Yeah.
Yes.
And I think it's for the landlord and the tenancy. It might at the moment sound as though the landlord's being pushed to the side a bit and all that, but I think it's also more for protection to the landlord, that the tenancy actually is aware of their responsibilities.
I think also, like everything, there are always two sides to a story, and there are also good tenants and bad tenants, and there are good landlords and bad landlords, and they're trying to even it up. And, you know, I suppose if it's not a perfect world, so you've got to cover most barriers, or all sides in an argument.
And everybody's always will come in at a different angle. And things like that.
Yes.
So tenancy can be quite mucky, but at the same time it can run quite smoothly. But if you do find you've got any issues, or you're not understanding, or you're not aware of maybe some of the changes and you just want to find out more, pop down to us at the Citizens Advice Bureau. We are open back to 5 days a week at 377-0078, and we're at 43 Penny Street in Masterton. Even you can go on to the 0800 367 222. Just be aware that you might find someone out of Wairarapa who will answer the phone. And as I say, we do have leaflets, but I would imagine we are going to be updated with the new ones quite soon.
Yeah, well, they try to phase out leaflets, but people do like to still take something home with them, or to just, like, for instance, I've got this leaflet here, which is Family Works, and it's amazing the number of people who come and take something like this, which helps in just referencing. It gives you phone numbers, it gives you where they are, and those sort of things we do still carry. And other than that, we can look things up and print things off. Mostly we are free. Sometimes if somebody wants quite a bit of things printed off, we do have a small charge, but it's very minimal. It's more like a donation. And we will definitely be available to talk things through with everybody who comes in. And that is the other thing, we're confidential.
Yes, so, you know, feel free to come in, and don't, you know, you might think your question's silly, but you probably find that, it's there niggling you, so it needs an answer.
It does.
Right, let's have a bit more music, and then we'll see what else we can bring up.
Yeah, so the family violence thing is coming in, and that's to do with people that want to get out of the house.
Is that
I'll be sitting when the evening
That's
comes,
coming in. They're working on
watching
it's going to come
the
in
ships
August.
roll in. Then I'll watch them roll away again.
But she might be the one that's earning the money.
I'm sitting on the dock of the bay, watching the tide roll away. Ooh, I'm just sitting on the dock of the bay, wasting time. I left my home in Georgia, headed for the Frisco Bay, 'cause I've had nothing to live for, and look like nothing's gonna come my way. So I'm just gonna sit on the dock of the bay, watching the tide roll away. I'm sitting on the dock of the bay, wasting time. Look like nothing's gonna change. Everything still remains the same. I can't do what 10 people tell me to do, so I guess I'll remain the same. Listen, sitting here resting my bones, and this loneliness won't leave me alone. Listen, 2,000 miles I roam just to make this dock my home. Now I'm just gonna sit at the dock of a bay, watching the tide roll away. Ooh, I'm sitting on the dock of a bay, wasting time.
Right, there we are, sitting on the dock of the bay. It sounds really quite a nice pastime to do, doesn't it, Wesley?
It does indeed. I spent the weekend at Foxton Beach.
All right, that's a change of beach for you.
I know, but it was pretty wild over there.
Yeah.
We put out our predator longline. She got a bit lost. the drift, or whatever it's called, under pulled it down the beach. Very kind man at the boating club, the surf club, brought it back.
And I mean, and saying that about, beaches, water, pools, just take care. We don't like hearing the news of drowning and things like that.
No. Well, I think it's one of those things that we should all appreciate. The people, and mostly the volunteers, the young people that train and get out there at the weekends on surf patrol.
Yeah.
They do a wonderful job.
Mm-hmm.
They really do. Making it safe for the people to swim within the flags, and they know the beaches, they know the undertow, and that tragedy up in the Waihi was something that we're not used to happening in this country.
No, we're not. No, and it is a tragic, that. But also, I think, driving. Come on, just take a little bit extra care. Unfortunately, the stats over Christmas wasn't very good either for driving and accidents and things like that.
No.
Yeah, and it's better to be late getting somewhere than never at all.
Well, we were driving yesterday, and a car zoomed past us on a area that you couldn't really see that far ahead, and by the time we got to Masterton, it was just right in front of us anyway.
Yeah.
So he didn't gain anything.
No.
Or she didn't gain anything. But just getting back to the water safety, kids today have got great opportunity to learn skills. And then there's this project going where you can take your old life jackets and get them swapped for new ones for a very reasonable price.
Okay.
And it was advertised in the local paper. There's another swap. So, you know, if you're going boating, it's most important for people to all have a life jacket. There's so many different ones that they're not cumbersome.
No, not. I think like years ago there used to be like a bricks, weren't they, in some ways putting them on, but nowadays they're much lighter and all that. And
yes,
it's just the way it is, isn't it? I mean, we all had to get used to wearing a seatbelt when we were in the cars. It's just the same when you go on boats. You just put on your life jacket. Yeah.
No, I can't understand people that don't put on a seatbelt when they're driving.
Yeah, it's...
Or the children, you have your children in the back seat.
Yes.
And you don't have them belted up.
No, it's quite scary when you see the kids rumping about in the back seat. I mean, yeah, as I said, we did it when we was young, but I don't think we were allowed to rump back. We had to sit down and behave ourselves, but cars were going at a lot slower pace back then.
They did.
And not so much traffic on the road.
No.
Yeah.
That's the thing. The traffic's fairly busy in places at the moment.
Yeah.
And
so, anyway, until next time we come back, we're not sure what we're going to be. Well, I won't be here actually, so I'm actually going to do my little trip overseas down to the South Island. And so I'm not sure who Wesley has got up her sleeve to be the guest next time.
No one yet. But it won't
be. If there is a subject that you would like to maybe hear a little bit more about, or maybe for us to touch on, just give us a call at the CAB and leave a message there, or pop in and just sort of like give us some ideas.
Yes, any subject to do with consumer housing, social policy, elderly, young people, youth health.
We can't use
budgeting.
Businesses for advertising because it's not within our means of doing that. So but anything that you think is informative for other people, maybe projects coming up, maybe things for people to get involved in the community. And saying that, this week I believe we got the cycling coming through town, so something to view, something to watch.
And that's the other thing, we update our lists of clubs and services and activities that people can join, and if you've got a club or an activity that you want us to put on our database, we're more than happy to put it on. We do an update every 6 months to a year, especially after AGMs. We check on people and the new chairman, secretary, contact numbers. We're always updating that. It takes a considerable amount of time, and that's what we do in our downtime when we haven't got calls from people. We're always checking. So we welcome anyone that likes to give us a call and or pop in with the details.
So if any of you do have any questions on the changes of tenancy, do give us a call at the CAB. And Wesley, I think that will be it for today.
Yes, well, take care, as you say, Moira. Drive safely, watch your kids at the beach, enjoy it when you get a lovely sunny day.
And watch your sun.
Slip, slop and slap, cover up, don't get sunburnt.
Okay, all right. All take care out there.
The Citizens Advice Bureau is where you talk and we listen.
But here on CABTalk, we talk and you listen. CABTalk, every Tuesday at 10 o'clock on Arrow FM.
And always look on the bright side of life.
The Citizens Advice Bureau is where you talk and we listen.
But here on CABTalk, we talk and you listen. CABTalk, every Tuesday at 10 o'clock on Arrow FM.
And always look on the bright side of life. Always look on the light side of life. If life seems jolly rotten, there's something you've forgotten, and that's to laugh and smile and dance and sing. When you're feeling in the dumps, don't be silly chumps. Just purse your lips and whistle, that's the thing. Hey, always look on the bright side of life. Come on. Always look on the bright side of life. For life is quite absurd, and death's the final word. You must always face the curtain with a bow. Forget about your scene, give the audience a grin. Enjoy it, it's your last chance anyhow. So always look on the bright side of death. Just before you draw your terminal breath. Life's a piece of shit when you look at it. Life's a laugh and death's a joke, it's true. You'll see it's all a show, keep 'em laughing as you go. Just remember that the last laugh is on you. And always look on the bright side of life. Always look on the right side of life. Come on, Brian. Cheer up.
Music is the word. Franco's on the show, flying out the bird.